Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we still have a wind chill advisory going here for eastern interior, 40-mile country, and specifically along the Yukon River there near Eagle, where the winds were gusting as high as 40 to 45 miles an hour at Eagle earlier today. Same thing going on at Delta, Big Delta there, and blowing down the river, but diminishing. You get over toward Nenana, and they're seeing gusts 20 to 30 miles an hour out of the east today. So that's going to continue through tonight and into tomorrow morning, Sunday morning, and that'll result in wind chills where the winds are blowing as low as 50 degrees below zero. Otherwise, we've got a way down here on the edge. There's a winter weather advisory out for the southern southeast coast, Prince of Wales Island, Craig Klawak, those areas on east over toward Stewart, Misty Fords, looking for 2 to 6 inches of snow. Another system moving in tonight. Will be mostly to the south, so that's where the snow will fall. And again, 2 to 6 inches. That's out through about noon tomorrow, and then precipitation will end and the whole system will dissipate. Looking at the satellite imagery, here's the moisture, or the cloud mass there associated with the incoming moisture. Another batch here, this one moving through with some light precipitation, more back to the southwest here with a little bit stronger system. We had one band of clouds here coming northward. You can see this portion moving eastward, this portion kind of pulling back to the west. So this area really dissipating and just getting pulled apart there. So staying pretty nice here up along the North Gulf Coast areas. Still pretty windy, cold over the northern panhandle. Wind's not quite as strong as yesterday. Still gusting 50 to 60 knots through Lynn Canals, measured at Eldred Rock, as opposed to the 70 plus mile per hour gusts recorded yesterday. And that trend's going to continue, a gradual downward trend in the winds there across the northern panhandle over the next couple of days. Otherwise, another cold morning here over the interior, eastern interior, specifically the Yukon Flats. Temperatures 45 to 50 below zero this morning, and temperatures down to 40 to 45 below over the Cop River Basin. And not quite so cold temperature-wise here due to the winds there, holding it up a little bit, but of course then that results in a wind chill advisory for the areas in between. Otherwise, clear skies here again over south central Alaska, and now some moisture up across Kodiak Island, bringing kind of a mixture of light rain or snow there. Really amounts not too heavy at all, but the heaviest occurring across the Alaska Peninsula with that east-southeast flow there, especially on the southern slopes there of the peninsula. And a little bit of moisture, not much, working its way up into the Pribilof Islands, westward here to Unalaska. Had some rain today, also areas of rain back to the west, Adak and Atka, and then a little cooler out west there, so some snow shower activity out towards Shimia. Northern Bering Sea, though, pretty good, still under the domination of strong high pressure up over the Chukchi Sea. So there was some clearing there. This is sea ice right through here, where it looks like lower clouds, but that's just sea ice on up into the Chukchi Sea. And then we've got a disturbance dropping southeastward, bulk of it way off to the into Canada there, but the trailing edge of the cold front just catching the eastern Arctic coast, kicking the winds up there this afternoon, and really just producing a few areas of snow from Barrow and then down in toward the eastern North Slope areas. Again, amounts were light. On the chart today, there's that frontal boundary right in that position. Again, just a weak trailing edge coming back across the eastern Beaufort Sea coast with the more of the stronger winds, heavier snow, and wind off to the east there. Strong high pressure, 1,053 millibars there centered over the Northwest Territories and the Yukon. That kept those winds going there over the panhandle today, especially in the northern areas, and also produced that gradient that kicked the winds up there over the eastern interior here along the river valleys there from, again, Delta Junction over to Nenana, and also for Eagle. lot lighter on the winds here in the central and western interior, but still pretty gusty here along the southwest coast. 15 to 25, maybe some higher gusts occurring along the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta coastline there. Then turning more southeasterly, milder flow producing rain across the Alaska Peninsula. Light amounts for Kodiak Island. Again, mixture going on throughout the day, but quite light. And this front lifting north of the Aleutians, so rain changing to showers there, and as I mentioned, snow showers out west. Continued easterly flow, keeping pretty good conditions here over the Bering Sea areas as far as ceilings and visibilities go. And that should continue into tonight, but we'll see an advance northward here, this moisture field up to St. Matthew Island, and milder temperatures riding in too, so it looks like it'll be mostly in the form of rain for the Pribilofs. A mixture of rain or snow chances increase. Just a chance here right along the southwest coast. A little bit better there for Nunivak Island, and it stays unsettled here with that frontal boundary hanging up across the Alaska Peninsula. Periods of rain and snow, periods of light rain and snow for Kodiak Island, and kind of a stationary frontal boundary, a weak frontal boundary. Again, just the weak trailing edge there, keeping a chance of some light snow, most likely flurries or possible fog there. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and those gusty winds you saw today, they'll be coming down with a lot lighter winds in store for the area there tonight. Otherwise, moisture, rain and snow here in the western Aleutians, mostly over the northwest Bering Sea. And then this area extends eastward into the southern panhandle. Got westerly flow here carrying that eastward. So that's what the winter weather advisory is. Again, 2 to 6 inches of snow possible from Prince of Wales Island eastward over toward the border. Cold, dry, and windy conditions continue up to the north there with pretty gusty winds again through Lynn Canal and Stevens Passage, right up along the North Gulf Coast. Lighter winds, a night much like last night coming out for just about all of interior Alaska. Moving on to the forecast for tomorrow, sunny and cold over the interior, and snow early here changes to mixed rain and snow and starts to taper off in the afternoon over the southern panhandle. A weak front keeps it again unsettled. Alaska Peninsula, periods of light rain and snow showers are Kodiak. Lingering flurries eastern Arctic coast, otherwise showery conditions, and not too bad on the winds there for the Aleutians. For the Monday forecast, a little bit better chance of some moisture working into the, well, again for Kodiak, probably a little bit heavier rain with this frontal boundary, and that works into southern Cook Inlet the way it looks right now with a mixture of rain and snow and milder temperatures across Bristol Bay into the southern Kuskokwim Valley. Periods of rain or showers for the Aleutians, southern Bering Sea, and the panhandle back into sunshine and light winds now, and pretty sunny across the interior all the way to the Arctic coast. Lows for tonight, again, as low as 45 degrees below zero here across the eastern interior. That could be anywhere from the Yukon Flats down into the Copper River Basin, probably be 35 to 40 below. Pretty chilly over the panhandle. Some areas dropping below zero where the winds lighten up. Mid-30s over Kodiak Island and the Aleutians. And then the highs for tomorrow, staying a little below zero here over the eastern interior areas to teens and 20s out west to near 40 for the Alaska Peninsula, 40s out over the lower 40s for the Aleutians, and rebounding temperatures here for the panhandle with except for down south, holding a little cooler with the clouds. And then the lows Monday morning, again, cold in the east, milder in the west. Same thing for the high temperatures, edging up towards zero over the eastern interior for a change.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to aviation here, IFR along the coast and then on up across the Arctic Ocean there from about Barrow eastward over toward Mackenzie River Delta. Good VFR, Brooks Range all the way down again the Gulf of Alaska and Prince William Sound here. Marginal VFR just getting up to about the Barren Islands, IFR Kodiak Island and along the south side of the Alaska Peninsula over to the Fox Islands. Back into marginal for the most of the Aleutians and more IFR for Shimianatu. And that area extends eastward across Nunivak Island almost to the Yukon Delta coast, but the marginal VFR staying along or just off the Kuskokwim Delta coastline. And for the Panhandle, we've got IFR in over the southern areas tomorrow morning, and then that improves, but to marginal VFR, it stays VFR up to the northern areas, and the eastern Arctic coast IFR throughout the afternoon, and then by Monday morning, big improvement up there, just some marginal VFR eastern north slope areas, and VFR back along the coast, southward through the interior, again into the Gulf of Alaska, back to all VFR for the Panhandle. Widespread IFR, southern Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, up to about the Pribilofs, and then northwestward, southwest there, marginal VFR and marginal stuff right up along the southwest coast. And then for the afternoon on Monday, we've got, again, a lot of IFR here kind of making another push to the north, much better one now with IFR in across the southern Kenai Peninsula, southern Cook Inlet, marginal VFR trying to get north of the Forelands, having trouble getting into Prince William Sound, otherwise the interior all the way out to the Arctic coast, good VFR Monday afternoon. Same thing for the Panhandle, good VFR, even the eastern Gulf of Alaska looking really good. So moving on to the passes, both Anatuvik and Atigun will be wide open tomorrow with great flying conditions, visibility ceilings unlimited for Lake Clark and Merrill, as well as rainy. And for windy, same forecast, good VFR, Isabel VFR, and from Intesta, VFR, Tanita, same forecast, Portage, good VFR as well, and Chilkoot and White, VFR, and with less winds, passes won't be quite as turbulent as they had been the last couple of days. And for the freezing levels, still at that upper level ridge, some warm air aloft here, not like it has been, about 2,000 feet up over the northwest interior, and then some milder air trying to nudge northward in toward Dixon entrance. We've got 2,000 feet here right across Prince of Wales Island, say Annette, Metlakatla, those areas. Otherwise at the surface here, definitely for the remainder of the southeast coast. And then 2 to 4,000 feet here up into the southeast Bering Sea with 4,000 feet up to about the Pribilof Islands. And taking a look at the icing forecast for tomorrow, again, weakening, dissipating boundary right through here, holding together better for Kodiak Island. So just a chance, could see some isolated moderate rime icing above 5,000 feet. Really scatters out here over much of the Bering Sea. The main area way back here to the west, but that will just come down, just catching Attu Island. Another area here, central Aleutians, extending over toward the Fox Islands, specifically Nikolsky, and not so much for Unalaska. And then here with that moisture trying to nudge its way northward, icing chances increase there over the southern southeast coast. And the jet stream, a little bit of a change taking place now. So I have this strong upper level ridge over the, now about the Chukchi Sea, sort of progressing eastward a little bit there, and then a strong northwest jet there catching the eastern Arctic coast into western Canada. Some ridging out here over the North Pacific, so that carrying the jet south of the Panhandle. And then easterlies at 50 for the Aleutians, 9,000 feet, shaping up like this. Southeast flow here, 25 to 30 across the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Stronger though here over the central Aleutians, closer into that low center, about 40 knots or so, falling back to 25. Otherwise 25 or 20 to 30 for much of the Bering Sea, east-southeasterlies. Pretty light up here under the ridging effects of the northwest interior, maybe 15 to 20. Kind of a zone of 20 to 25 knot winds here through the central interior again, much like today. Otherwise pretty light here for southern Alaska into the Gulf, as well as the Panhandle, and a 3,000 feet. Light winds southern Alaska, east-northeast or northeast 10 to 20 over the interior, falling back to 5 to 10 for the northwest coast. Strongest winds central Aleutians out of the east, 25 to 35 knots here. And so moving on to turbulence with those winds, isolated moderate chop here, Adak and Atka, possibly a little bit more in the way of moderate chop there for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, light to isolated moderate chop, and improving over the northern Panhandle.
Leatherbacks are the largest turtles on Earth, growing up to 7 feet long and weighing more than 2,000 pounds. These sea turtles are among the most highly migratory animals on Earth, some traveling up to 10,000 miles a year between their nesting and feeding grounds. Prevalent in every ocean except the Arctic and Antarctic, the species overall is declining, more so in the Pacific. In the eastern Pacific, the Mexican population was once thought to be the largest in the world and has experienced an alarming decline.
This trajectory of decline that we've seen and actually collapse. We're talking about only 20 or 30 turtles nesting every year, where thousands used to just 40 years ago. That's the kind of dramatic decline.
The western Pacific population has been declining steadily, and it's particularly critical to act now before it collapses, while there are enough turtles and nests to respond to conservation measures. But threats to all leatherbacks in the Pacific need to be addressed.
The top threats to populations are uncontrolled coastal development, all the bad stuff on the nesting beaches, egg harvest, poaching of the females, predation on the eggs by dogs and pigs. Deforestation makes the sand too warm and dry and the eggs don't hatch. Another one is incidental capture in fishing gear. During their vast migrations, they get caught in fishing gear throughout the Pacific. And finally, marine debris, which the leatherbacks mistake for their favorite food, jellyfish, and they choke on those.
Protecting leatherbacks in U.S. waters alone is not enough to ensure the continued existence of the species. The highly migratory nature of Pacific leatherbacks requires cooperation and international collaboration. NOAA is focusing on partnerships with Mexico, Central America, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands in the Pacific.
Our action plan promotes a holistic recovery strategy that addresses all the sources of mortality. So that's basically ensuring that the remaining nesting sites are protected and the nests produce as many hatchlings as possible. And then secondly, in tandem with that, is reducing the fisheries-related mortalities. We're working with international partners to incentivize community participation on the nesting beach conservation and developing alternative livelihood programs that wean communities off leatherback resources and introduce alternative methods for food and income. Recovery is going to take a long time, on the order of 20 to 30 years at least, before we see some of these actions bear fruit. But here in the US, we can all help leatherbacks by making seafood choices, for instance, that support sustainable fishing practices. And beachgoers can certainly do their part by keeping our oceans clean of plastic debris, picking up marine litter, particularly plastic bags.
Together with our partners, we are strengthening protection and conservation efforts to ensure a future for leatherbacks, helping them to survive and once again thrive in the waters of the Pacific Ocean.
For over 40 years, NOAA scientists have been collecting data and piecing together the story of the gray whale. Each year, new discoveries are made, revealing the secrets of this ancient traveler. With the northeastern Pacific population recovered, leading scientists from the NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center continue their research efforts to help save the western population from extinction. The most effective way to identify individuals and count the population is to photograph them from the surface. Using the gray whale's distinctive markings and gray spots caused by parasites on their skin, scientists document these characteristics to identify individuals.
So we're able to track migratory pathways and corridors by the simple use of photo identification. There are other ways to do that as well, biopsy sampling and genetics.
And from the air.
Aerial photography is one way you can study animals based on their size and shape. So you can learn a lot about nutritive and reproductive condition of whales just by measuring their size and shape from vertical aerial photographs.
You can also put satellite transmitters on them and track them remotely. You put the transmitter on and let them go, and you watch them move across the Pacific or down to China or wherever it might be.
To further learn and discover where these great sojourners swim, the team of researchers traveled to Russia and set up camp on Sakhalin Island.
The main focus of our research while we were on Sakhalin was to collect photo identification. If it was a whale that we had not collected a genetic sample from previously, we would also attempt to collect a sample from the whales.
Whereas whales are endowed with natural insulation, their human observers must gear up to brave the cold in order to study these marine giants up close.
We're typically only able to work about 1/3 of the time that we're there, and that's mostly due to this fog that just invades the area and sits sometimes for weeks on end. So it can be very challenging to try and do field work in this site.
Recently, 2 whales from the western population surprised scientists by migrating across the Pacific to the waters of California and Mexico.
It's a really fun finding. It's added another piece to the puzzle that we didn't previously know about. And I would have to say that it's opened up more questions than we had before.
Research scientists from Japan, Russia, and the United States share images of animals they've spotted.
We take a photograph of an individual off of Sakhalin Island, and we get a phone call from Japanese scientists, and they say, hey, guess what? We've got a picture of a gray whale in Japan. We say, can you send it to us? We'd love to try and match it. They'll send us the picture, we'll compare it to our catalog, and we'll say, hey, we've got a match from Sakhalin to Japan.
Unlike many species of whales that still remain on the endangered species list, the eastern Pacific gray whale, once on the brink of extinction, now numbers about 20,000 individuals. Recovery efforts that started 40 years ago and the ongoing research and monitoring by NOAA scientists have contributed to the conservation of the gray whales. Together, with legal protection and public education, scientists are playing their part to ensure the survival of this magnificent migratory animal.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Back looking at today's sea ice analysis, about the same as what was going on yesterday. Continued westward expansion of the main ice edge here, closing in there on St. Matthew Island. Probably see maybe some strips arriving there over the next couple of days, and even down into Bristol Bay, although now milder air spreading in on southeast winds there, so I wouldn't look for much more in the way of any extensive growth in the sea ice there. But we're going to keep the same trend going the next few days here for the southwest coast into the northern Bering Sea, continuing that westward expansion. And moving on to coastal forecasts, easterlies all along the coast at small craft advisory levels, 25 to 30 knots. Except the extreme north coast, they're coming down to 15, but seas running 9 to 12 feet. And over the Lynn Canal area, still another pretty windy day, just a general downward trend in those wind speeds though. Still gusting to 50 knots out of the north. Stevens Passage sustained north 30, much lighter there for Clarence Strait, northeast 25, northeast 15. And that becomes southeast 15 there for your day on Monday. Small craft advisories now, Stevens Passage on up the Lynn Canal for those northerly winds that are continuing to subside, and southeast 10 to 20 on the south coast, east-southeast 15 on the north coast with seas running 9 feet. Prince William Sound, north 15, gust 25 though out of the northern bays, northeast 20 here for the eastern North Gulf Coast with gusts of 35 knots, otherwise just northeast 20 for the western Gulf, and then small craft advisories for both the Barren Islands, Kachemak Bay, and southern Cook Inlet, only 10 knots north of the Forelands. And then for Monday, north winds stay light here for northern Cook Inlet. Small craft advisories hold for the southern inlet here, all the way down to Kachemak Bay. Northeast winds turn easterly at 30 knots for the Barren Islands, and east winds 25 for the western North Gulf Coast, fall back to about 20 knots with 7-foot seas, so they'll lose the small craft advisories there on the east side. Prince William Sound, pretty light northeasterlies now, seas subsiding to 2 feet. And for Kodiak Island, 25-knot winds on the east side, and gales there for Shelikof Strait, northeast 35, and small craft advisories for Bristol Bay. Small crafts here, Sitkinak all the way to Cape Sarachev, lighter easterly winds on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. For the Monday outlook, coming back up east 30 knots there from Bristol Bay all the way down to Cape Sarachev, and then from Cape Sarachev to Castle Cape, south 30 knots. then southeast from there up to Sitkinak, and then easterlies at 30 knots across Kodiak Island into Shelikof Strait, with seas running 9 to 10 feet for Kodiak Island to 9 to 13 feet for the peninsula. And then for the western Aleutians, we've got easterlies at 20, pick up to 25 knots out of the northeast there from Kiska Island to Shimia. And for Adak and Atka, small craft advisories east, 25 knots. Those extend across Nikolsky on Alaska Island, more of an east-southeast wind at 25 with 7 to 11-foot seas. And then for the Monday forecast, coming down on the winds here, south to southeast, 20 to 25 knots there across Unalaska Island, otherwise 15 to 20 here for the central Aleutians. And then out west, just coming down to 15 knots there for the far western zone, all out of the east to about 20 knots over to Amchitka. And for the Norton Sound zone tomorrow, northeast 25 knots there. So brisk wind advisories there across St. Lawrence Island, down the southwest coast here, 25 knots right out of the east. A little lighter for the Pribilof, seas still 8 feet though, and east 30 with 13-foot seas, St. Matthew Island. And then for the Monday outlook, we've got northeast 30 here for Norton Sound, but only 20 knots for St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew Island, northeast 25 with 8-foot seas, and quite a difference here along either side of Nunivak Island. Light northeast 15 on the north side, and then we've got minimum gales here, northeast 35 blowing out of Kuskokwim Bay, south of Nunivak Island, turning east at 25 for the Pribilofs, the seas running about 8 feet. And then for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, going light and variable, wind-wise here tomorrow, later tonight and tomorrow there, but mostly easterly drift at about 10 for much of the Arctic coast, turning north from Cape Beaufort down to the Bering Strait, but only 10 knots. And the outlook for Monday, pick these winds up here on the west side out of the east-northeast, looking at about 20 knots here for the west side all the way down to the Bering Strait. Light winds out from the east for the central coast, and then westerlies 15, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, increase over toward Demarcation Point up to brisk wind advisories 25 knots. And for tonight, again, whatever wind is going on there will diminish, but the flurries will continue with this weak trailing edge of that cold front hanging in the area there, kind of stationary but quite weak. No change over the interior, clear and cold again. Temperatures maybe 40 below or more from Copper River Basin into the Yukon Flats, and that holds through Monday, but bear chance of snow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.
Growing bolder